Hey y'all, welcome to episode 9 of Off the Fields. This is Sports Uncovered. We're basically going to be breaking down the Michigan investigation. We're also going to be talking about Charles Barkley's his question to Adam Silver during the Inside NBA edition. You know, he asked him about domestic violence and how the NBA needs to be at the forefront. What are they going to do to push that narrative? And then also, Francis Ngannou's fight versus Tyson and Fury, that's something that we must talk about because he was definitely robbed of that win. So let's get Paris on here because we have a lot to break down today. Let's see. There's Paris. All right. Yay, there's Paris. Okay, so excuse my voice, everybody. It's a little raspy here. I guess the temperature has dropped somewhat a little bit in South Florida here. That's what they say. But let's be real. So on today's episode, I was already saying that we're going to break down, Sports Uncovered. We're going to investigate Michigan scandal when it comes to sign stealing. Obviously, there's updates on Jim Harbaugh's contract offer that he was supposed to get. It would have technically made him, they say, the highest paid coach in Big Ten conference. So, I mean, I'm just one. I want to know why did they decide to come out with that information now before the investigation is even fully over with. I mean, it's not like we knew beforehand that he was going to have this big contract come up this year, this offer that's going to make him out of all coaches the highest paid coach. What is your take on that when you heard that?
Well, first and foremost, for those that aren't aware of the Michigan scandal, let me just break that down with you very quickly. So apparently,
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Okay.
We're good?
Yeah.
So, let me just break down the Michigan scandal for those who are unaware. So, to make a long story short, Michigan football has been accused of allegedly sign stealing from other programs in order to enhance their winning percentages and winning outcomes. It is arguably probably the biggest scandal in college football history. I think, honestly, it really has just rocked the whole sports world because while many football experts and current and former players will say that sign stealing is or trying to steal signs or use signs is normal and isn't illegal, the way that Michigan did it actually was. And so again, to make a long story short, Michigan has allegedly used in-person scouting in order to steal signs. Connor Stallions, a lower member of the faculty member for Michigan football, is currently being accused as the head honcho of the entire scandal. And I mean, it's almost unheard of. Apparently, he bought tickets to 12 of the 13 Big Ten schools, the 2021 and 2022 SEC championships, in addition to now being linked to some SEC schools and helping to assist SEC schools in order to keep Michigan in the good running for the college football playoff. So it is, I mean, the rumors go long, miles long. But in terms of Jim's contract, I didn't even know he was getting an extension. I didn't know
Yeah.
anything of it until Michigan came out and told the world that they paused the contract, which I don't know if they did that as a power move on their behalf in order to kind of protect their coaching and their um, football team. I'm not really sure where the investigation is going. The NCAA has investigated. Today, there was more news saying that the Big Ten confirmed that, or the Big Ten is alluding that Michigan had also used their ball boys in order to help cheat in this scandal. So it's a lot, but in terms of the contract being paused, again, I don't think anyone ever knew about his contract pretty much being extended and en route to making him the highest Big Ten paid coach. I do kind of find it, I feel that possibly they're doing it as a sign to show that they're following protocols or, in a way to make themselves look good. But Michigan football right now is literally in the ground, and I don't think anyone would disagree with that. It's very unfortunate what's going on for the program and in college football as a whole.
Yeah, I think that, basically they pulled the offer because of the investigation. You know what I'm saying? They're in the wrong. All the evidence is stacking against them.
Right.
And they really don't have an excuse. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's really going to be about, why didn't anybody catch this? You know what I'm saying? It's going to be hard for people to actually believe that Harbaugh didn't know anything about it. I want to say in 2017 or 2016 when JT Barrett was a quarterback and we were in Ann Arbor, I mean, there was already a scuffle on the sideline, about somebody trying to sabotage JT on the sideline. And basically was a camera person. That person also could have fit in this category that as an inside person who is trying to sabotage or sign steal or things of that nature. I think that goes hand in hand for when that happens. So I'm not surprised that, all this is being revealed about Michigan, but I do think that when it comes to his contract being pulled, it just lets us know the level of seriousness that is that's happening right now. So like basically, what are his options as far as Jim Harbaugh? Because he can't go to the NFL. The NFL is not going to be understanding about this case. You know what I'm saying? This investigation with the NCAA. So he's not going to have the option to go to the NFL. I think that this could be potentially like career ending when it comes to the NFL opportunities, and also with college football. He's going to have to consider other ways to still be involved and maybe tap into the other leagues. You know what I'm saying? XFL, USFL, CFL. But I don't think that he's going to be able to go to the NFL, even if he wants to run away from this. But at the same time, I don't see him projecting that he wants to run away from the situation. It seems that he wants to stay. I think that they also may be talking about all this now, of course, because our rivalry game is coming up, Ohio State versus Michigan. I'm not going to say the letter M. I'm going to say Michigan. So, but when it comes to that game, it's going to be really crucial for Michigan to win that game if they can focus on the game at this point. We know that Harbaugh said in press conference today with Big Ten Media that it's basically like he's on a one-track mind, right? He's on a one-track mind because he's trying to only focus on beating Ohio State. I think that's his main focus. I think that this investigation happening the time that it is definitely a distraction about in regards to the Ohio State game, which is the biggest game of their season. I think that, you know, Harbaugh, he has a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and that's why he let it be known at the press conference that his mind is on one track and one track only. And he's also trying to play it safe by not mentioning too much details about the contract. Now, he said that the allegation wasn't accurate, right? He said that.
Yes,
Yeah, she's right. His legacy is now stained. She's so right. I can't hear. You sound really low, Paris.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me good?
I am not. You just sound really far away. Okay. I think that, his legacy is standing forever. I think this is basically his downfall. I think that it's going to be difficult for him to coach again after this, period, because this is just too much.
I disagree with you. I don't think it'll be. Can you hear me with the sound?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm going to get up closer because it still sounds low.
Okay. I think it actually. I think it might be I think my microphone might be covered at the bottom.
Okay.
But I project my voice, so hopefully I'm loud. But I actually disagree with you. I don't think it will be hard for him to coach after. And I'm going to play the race card here. I think with him being a white man, yes, he's going to have to face repercussions, but I don't think his coaching career would be over. If he were to be a black man, I would say it would be over. But knowing how the industry, I'm just being honest, I think he might have to take a couple years away and maybe accept a lower coaching position, but I don't think his coaching career as a whole is over. I do believe his legacy is somewhat stained, as a person mentioned in the comments. And I also believe that his time at Michigan, though, no disrespect, he may not have, though he didn't have the most illustrious career at Michigan, I do believe that it will now be remembered for the big scandal. Over all of his glorious moments prior to COVID that he may have had, I don't think that any of it will be remembered because of this big scandal. I also feel that watching Michigan this season after the whole scandal unfolded, it's uncomfortable. It's going to be very uncomfortable for players and fans to watch, knowing about the whole science and controversy. I don't think that it's going to be appealing to fans. I think even watching the Michigan State game this past weekend, it was, I think, 49-0. It's just, when you look back, and I really encourage everyone who's watching, I want you to look back at Michigan's 2020 season and then look at their 2021 season and the teams that they played, how fast it's like, as you're living in the moment, you don't catch these things. But when you actually do reflect back and you look back at the seasons that Michigan had, the turnaround does not make sense. It doesn't make sense. Not with the same staff, not with the same, pretty much, the same team. You don't just turn around in the way that Michigan did. When you look at Ohio State defense had made a huge turnaround, but when you actually look at the biggest turnaround within the program, it was a coaching change. They have a new defensive coordinator, and now their defense looks different. That makes sense. But to have the same staff, the same veteran team members, and have just a turnaround like this, I'm not saying it's impossible, but for that Michigan team, yes, I will say it's impossible. And I don't think that Michigan turned their program around in the most justifiable way. And, a lot of people have been saying, oh, everyone does it. Michigan just so happened to get caught. At the end of the day, a wrong is a wrong.
Yeah.
And when you law, whether in sports, whether outside sports, you have to deal with the consequences. Just last week we talked about Chris Olave and how he got pulled over for speeding. Many people speed,
Mm-hmm.
not everyone gets pulled over, but when you do, knowing that you broke the law, you're gonna have to deal with the consequences. Yes, everyone does it, but it still doesn't make it right.
Right.
I know that I speed on my way, to work when I'm late. That doesn't make it right. And God forbid if I get pulled over for it, I'm then gonna have to deal with the consequences. And I'm gonna use that same analogy when it comes to Michigan football. Yes, other teams might sign still or might do what Michigan did to an extent, but at the end of the day, now Michigan has to deal with the consequences because they are the ones in this situation that unfortunately got the short end of the stick. And I think it's going to be a big learning lessons for a lot of football programs around the country.
Yeah. So, I mean, he did serve his school imposed 3-game suspension earlier this season. He's only in his second year of his 5-year contract with Michigan. I mean, it was signed in 2022, and it guarantees him more than $7 million. Several bonus incentives. So since they actually beat us, you know what I'm saying? Of course, that boosted his everything. You know what I'm saying? But now it's just, I don't know. It's just not looking good for them. I don't think it is. I think that this is going to affect the game. It may make them go hard. It may make them go hard, but at the same time, I think it's definitely a black cloud over Michigan, and they're going to have to figure out how to get from up under that cloud, because I think it's going to take a lot more than just Michigan fans, because this is difficult. But what I do want to get into is, Charles Barkley, he basically asked Adam Silver on live TV. This was not in the script. This was not on the prompter. He asked him about domestic violence cases in the NBA. So, this is not the first time Charles Barkley has spoken about it. He really started speaking about it, I would say, back in 2014. But because of the recent cases, you know what I'm saying? The most recent being Miles Bridges, his suspension was shortened. And so the issue with the domestic violence in the NBA is that the players aren't actually being held accountable. They are being held accountable. They do have some consequences, but it just doesn't, it seems like they're getting a slap on the wrist within the NBA. Like the suspensions are so short, to the point where it's like even another, Hall of Famer in the NBA, Charles Barkley, was like, what are we doing about this? You know what I'm saying? And I think that Adam Silver was caught off guard with that question. I don't think that he really gave the answer that people were looking for, because it was more of a general, not scripted, but it was just very generalized and not actually addressing the concern and the issue. Because I think that if Charles Barkley actually felt like this was the time and the place to ask him this question, then it really is time for them to really start doing something about it. You know what I'm saying? So, this is what Charles Barkley said. He said, I got a serious question for you. There's a couple of disturbing incidents of domestic violence in the NBA right now. What are we doing to address that? You can't put your hands on women, man. What are we as a league going to do about that? So Silver said in response, he said, that's an area we're not looking to compete against other leagues, which, I mean, what does that have to do with anything? Anyways, our players associations, credit to them, this wasn't adversarial. We put in place a new program for how we deal with, first of all, accusations of domestic violence. So one, I think, is that part right there, dealing with accusations of domestic violence. I mean, obviously, if they've already gotten the case and been to court and been charged, I mean, obviously there was truth to it, to the cases that have happened so far. So it's not just accusations, you know what I'm saying? It's like he's trying to minimize that. Accusations of domestic violence, even before they're prosecuted, part of it goes to training of our players, counseling of our players to make sure they understand during high stress situations, never resort to violence. against anyone. We're addressing. We have state-of-the-art counseling professionals. Do you? Okay. Dealing with our players. But of course, if a guy does cross the line, the consequences are enormous. That does not add up to what people know and what people see within the NBA. Even other players don't agree that it resonates with the crime that was committed. You know what I'm saying? So what is your take on it? Because I really think that this is the topic that really needs to get talked about, because we were just talking about Chad Wheeler last week. You know what I'm saying? So it spills over into the NFL too.
I mean, I don't think Chad Wheeler is currently playing in the NFL right now amid his investigation and trial. Um, and hey, when you think about it, if he was a school teacher, do you think he'd still be teaching?
Mm-hmm.
If he was a professor at a university, do you think that the university would still have him teaching at a university? No.
Right.
So, with this said, until the investigation, until the court has ruled on a decision, then I think perhaps he should be playing on the court.
Mm-hmm.
With this said, I don't think that the team should have him out there. And I think that should be not only a rule by the team, but by the NBA. The NBA should enforce keeping players off the court and on the bench when they are involved in situations like this. Because we all know that the NBA has a very bad habit of just slapping players on the wrist and then patting them on the butt to go back out on the court and shoot some hoops.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, this is the example that is being put and praised on a pedestal for younger players. I'm not sure if you know, but there is a young hooper by the name of Mikey. I can't remember his last name, but he's a high school player. His name is Mikey, and he's currently on trial in relation to, if I'm not mistaken, Mikey Williams, a Memphis recruit, Mikey Williams, and he is currently on trial amid a gun case. And I believe that the case did involve a live active shooter, in which the court is trying to figure out whether he was the actual active shooter or he was just a bystander who also happened to have a gun. Either way, he is a high school student. He's currently on trial. His whole life, his whole career. I mean, again, he's not even in college yet.
Right.
Here he is, a high school student. He is making millions. That whole NIL law. So now he's able to profit off of his name, image, and likeness. But here he is on trial, and I hate to say it, but it resembles very much of just a normal NBA case like this.
Yeah.
The day of his trial, he actually posted on social media a meme, in relation to him being on trial. And I know, but we've seen that with the whole gun waving.
Right.
After the player, got for waving his gun on live, he then goes back and does it again, and keeps doing it as if, he is a meme or a gif or a joke. So I think it's a serious issue, and it's something that the NBA is going to have to straighten up very quickly.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
But the thing is this, the NBA, and I think Adam Silver, he really is going to have to stand by his word. He's going to have to show these programs. We need to see video footage of these programs, of these players walking in these so-called programs that have state-of-the-art counseling professionals. You know what I'm saying? Once people actually see the work getting put in, I think that'll change the perspective a little bit, because right now there's a slight dark cloud over him too, Adam Silver.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I think that some of the memorable domestic violence cases that we know of are like Jason Kidd, Matt Barnes, Ron Artest, Meta, most recently Miles Bridges, and then there's also Jeffrey Taylor. And I mean, these cases, obviously, they were not, you know, banned from the NBA. They continued to play. You know what I'm saying? They just switched teams. They got playtime. They made their mark. They made their impact. They still got to play the sport that they love and that they're passionate about. And then, you know, their significant others, maybe now as an ex, you know what I'm saying? They had to suffer and go through the shame, the guilt, the embarrassment of, you know, the NBA basically like, oh, okay, you did this. Here's a slap on the wrist. Don't do it again, but you can still go play. And that's the messed up part about it. You know what I'm saying? There has to be something that's more, you know, enforceful in a way, and that's more disciplined. Because when you look at the league like the Big Three, I think that Ice Cube understands the assignment. You know what I'm saying? There are things that he has in order, that in his league, it caters to these types of issues and these situations when they come about. So I just think that with the NBA, it's different. It always starts at the top, as we've always been saying. You know, it starts at the top with these people being in these positions and being able to make these changes. And somebody who is in the position to make these changes, he just really got to do it, is Adam Silver. So I think that Charles Barkley brought the heat when he asked that question, and I think that Adam Silver, he had no choice but to answer. I think he played it safe because there are some things that are not in place as what he may not even really know. You know what I'm saying? Like, only to a certain extent. Somebody else is in charge of that type of department or that type of program. You know what I'm saying? So I think that when he asked that question, everybody was so shocked that it was good to actually hear him give an answer, but it's just not the answer that we were looking for, unfortunately. So hopefully the NBA does enforce seriousness about when it comes to like domestic violence, because we've heard plenty of stories. You know what I'm saying? We always see the aftermath and what happens and the embarrassment and everything. And that stuff is just traumatizing in a way. You know what I'm saying? It's in front of millions of people. So it's just, they need to take it more serious, especially when it comes to, you know, there are other instances where it's not just happened one time. You know what I'm saying? When these guys actually do domestic violence, it doesn't just happen once. It's happened before, and they just actually got caught. So it's like something seriously needs to be done about it. I think Charles Barkley saying it is also good as a Black man, because it comes with some, basically, it's like, I know we got to work on this problem. You know what I'm saying? And it was time for him to do it again. So hopefully we see some type of result from that. You know what I'm saying? Especially with the NBA season happening.
You know, I hope we do, because the NBA is also part of the problem, the societal problem that we have.
Yeah.
You know, within young boys, like I said, you know, they are an example, a large example that many players, both in and outside of basketball, look up to. And so when you have these big sports figures, when you are a big league like this, that you know has such a great influential impact on society, you kind of become a mirror, or you become, you know, a vision that people put on their vision boards.
Yeah.
So when you do things, you know, people begin to follow, and they do all they can, you know, to almost mirror the image that you're setting out. So it's very important that the NBA, you know, does, you know, straighten certain things out when it comes to the league, the players. And I find it interesting because Adam Sandler, you know, he felt that N1 wasn't proper. He felt the image wasn't proper enough, you know. And he feels like the Big Three, the image of the Big Three, you know, it is similar to N1, in the sense of it's not proper enough, or it really not white appealing, because that's what he, you know, he's really trying to say. But when you look at the NBA isn't either.
Right.
The NBA is no different than the N1 or the Big Three.
Right.
And just, just because the game is being played in a different manner, and I say that with the respect of, N1 was very notorious for their trash talk. you know, but that comes in sports, no matter what sport you play. You know, the athletes, you know, will always do some little, you know, trash talk because that's a part of sports culture. So just because that might not be allowed in the NBA in the same way that, you know, N1 allowed it, still doesn't mean that the NBA is on the same step as N1, or even a step below. Because, you know, as you said, the NBA is notorious for just slapping players on the wrist and allowing them to proceed. You know, knowing the dangers that a lot of these players and organizations really have within their institutions.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, again, I'm going to keep bringing it up. Chad Wheeler, his case needs to be getting media attention because he beat up his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend. I mean, it's crazy because, again, we're not seeing anything about it. I'm not sure if it's because, like, he's a white football player, she's a black girl, and it's just, you know, okay, it happens, you know, but it just should be getting way more attention because obviously domestic violence is an issue in male-dominated sports. And so when it comes to Chad Wheeler in a situation, you know, they're trying to blame it on his mental illness, being bipolar, which I think that's always the go-to sometimes for white counterparts. And I think that's where, you know, it still is deemed as systematic racism. You know what I'm saying? So I just think that what Charles Barkley did was needed, and it's gonna spark the conversation for other leagues as well, not just the NBA, but the NBA could be the focal starting point. I would agree with that. So yeah, and speaking of the violence, I mean, over the weekend there was a huge fight with Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou. And Tyson Fury, for those who may not know, Tyson Fury is the heavyweight champion of the world right now, from Great Britain. And Francis Ngannou is a MMA fighter, one of the best to do it. He's known to have the most powerful punch in ever. Right now. Yeah. Yes. And so Francis Ngannou is from Cameroon, which is a country in Africa. It's funny because, like, some people, when they speak, like, talking about Africa, like, they just talk about Africa as if, like, it's a whole country and you're just walking the whole like, no, it's a continent. So the country where he's from is Cameroon. And MMA is not boxing. I would say that MMA, you know, it has some of the similar techniques. You know, it's also a mind game. And I think that the fight, I mean, this is what he said. He said boxing is his first passion, right? So basically, he's like, if I ever were to have my first professional boxing match, I want it to be with Tyson Fury. And that happened. He was granted that opportunity, getting trained by Mike Tyson, one of the best to ever do it. I mean, Mike Tyson is getting all of his flowers these days. But Mike Tyson also had a past of domestic violence. So, but not piggybacking off of that, I just want to say that Mike Tyson, this is a comeback from him, right? Coming from that dark cloud of domestic violence. It's a comeback from him because he's basically taking somebody under his wing. And a prodigy. You know, this could be the next Mike Tyson. His style in the ring was definitely giving Mike Tyson. You know what I'm saying? But it was his very first professional boxing match, and he got robbed of the win, unfortunately. So Francis Ngannou was what, 6'4". He weighs 272 pounds. He's all muscle. But when you looked at Tyson Fury, he's 6'9", 277, and there was no muscle. Okay, based on what I saw, there was no muscle. He's just like, he just has the mass, the body mass. You know what I'm saying? The size. You know, he's just a really big guy. And I mean, previewing the fight, he was talking about how he just laid in bed all day. It's like he didn't even take the fight serious because this is an MMA fighter crossing over into a sport that he's never done, right? He
And,
never.
and for those who
Yeah.
see the fight, I do encourage you to see it. I didn't watch the fight, but I did watch the highlights of the clip. And when Brianna did say that Francis got robbed, I mean, he actually did get robbed.
Yeah.
I've never been a boxer before, but I assure you that if you watch this too, you will understand what we say, what we mean when we say that Francis got robbed.
Yeah.
He definitely, and it raises the question, if it was a money move, if Tyson Fury didn't win, or was given the win, for reasons outside of actually boxing.
Clearly.
And I think that that also raises another question and issue that is in sports, in terms of sports betting. And is that is it serious enough to where it depicts the outcomes of major sporting events, and or if that is the case, then what are we supporting? What is the purpose of watching these games and these sporting events if they're bought out?
I know. And the thing is this, like, everybody, I mean, all the boxing legends were there. And some of the most elite athletes in the world right now were there. This was in Saudi Arabia. So Saudi is the future of sports right now. Everybody, that Saudi is trying to, have a lot of sporting events there, get people to come there. And people did, and it was a elaborate, beautiful event for it to be a boxing match. I've never done anything like it. I mean, the visuals were insane. And then not only that, yeah, it's the people who were there, the presence that was there. And during the fight, the crowd started chanting for Francis. It just seemed like every boxing legend, MMA legend, champion, they all had favored Francis Ngannou in this match. And even with the outcome, they are still saying that he actually won. And it's like, you know what? Yes, we can say that he actually got robbed of the win because you can look at his face and tell. You know what I'm saying? Tyson Fury's face was way more messed up than Francis Ngannou. You know what I'm saying? And then Tyson Fury, there was a dirty moment during the match where he elbowed Francis in the eye, and that's how it even got inflamed in those first two rounds, I would say, is because the elbow. And then the slow replay showed him getting elbowed in the eye. And when it comes to the points, I don't think that they actually took points off for that. They definitely just like brushed it off, didn't say anything about it. But you know what? If Tyson Fury would have lost, they would have lost billions of dollars, unfortunately. So I think that the way Francis Ngannou was talking about, like, well, of course they didn't want to give it to me. I'm the new guy, right? I'm the new guy coming into the sport, never played it, and I just came in and dominated, but you guys don't want to give me the win. You know what I'm saying? Who was more deserving of the win? Obviously he was, but you know what? Boxing has a history of making plays like this. Very, very shady and unfair plays, but it all comes down to the judges. You know what I'm saying? But for me, the credibility also comes from the legends that were there. The people who were fighting with Muhammad Ali. You know what I'm saying? Like, they definitely know. And I wish one of them was, on that judging board because, I mean, I just don't understand why I do understand why they gave it to him, because they didn't want to lose the money. It was about the money. But at the same time, just not fair. Not a fair fight. I'm all for Francis Ngannou. He proved everybody wrong in the entire world who doubted him.
He did.
Like I said, this guy has a powerful punch. I mean, even just a little jabs he was giving Tyson Fury were like knocking him out. It was crazy. Like,
It's going to be interesting though moving forward. What Francis decides to do if he does decide to pursue boxing a little more. If he does, it'll be interesting if we will ever see a rematch. And what that outcome will be, knowing that Tyson has now played Francis. So he would kind of have somewhat of an insight on the type of fighter Francis is. But again, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate and it's sad though because again, if you guys see the fight, there was just no way that Tyson was victorious.
I know, like
I'm not, being a former athlete myself, I know how it feels to have things that you deserve being taken from you.
Yeah.
So I want to do that to another person. If someone righteously and with integrity deserved, a title, a win, or a championship, then you can't take that away from them. But that fight that happened over the weekend, that was not the case at all.
Yeah.
And I it honestly, in a bigger landscape, like I said, it's going to cause people to draw back because no one's going to want to support anything that's rigged. No one's going to want to watch, tune in, invest their money, and something that's already pre-planned, especially when it comes to sporting events. And that's the point. Someone just said that Tyson Fury looked surprised when he won. And I think that he looked surprised. The internet, Instagram. I think I surprised Brianna when you sent it to me because, just by the highlights alone, I mean, it wasn't a close matchup. It was a straight up, Francis. He won the fight. So again, I'm in disbelief, and I'm not even sure if I'd even watch the next match.
Yeah,
with them.
You know what? I did catch Francis saying afterwards that they can run it back. You know what I'm saying? Because he's not going anywhere, and he's in this to win this. Like he is not going anywhere. He is now officially all the way in. And the other thing is this: I don't think that Tyson Fury expected to go all 10 rounds. I think that he thought it was gonna be like done in maybe 5 rounds at the most. For me, I was like, this guy is, you could just tell that he wasn't taking it serious. You know what I'm saying? And I think he's embarrassed to a certain extent because all of his colleagues are saying that the other person won, right? Even his own coaching staff, you know what I'm saying? You have to be realistic with yourselves. You have to know that the thought ran through their minds that this guy actually lost. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. You can give credit. He gave credit to Francis and everything for dominating the way that he did, though. I mean, but that's just being a good sport,
right?
Sportsman-like. But yeah, that's not the last that we're gonna see of Francis and Ngannou. I think we're gonna see him in I mean that. For right now, that was the biggest fight that he could have done. You know what I'm saying? Tyson Fury. So that is the biggest fight that we're going to see him do right now. But I think that next year, it's going to be just insane. And people are really going to tune into this guy now because people weren't that familiar with the fact that this was his actually first professional boxing match. So I think that next year, we're going to see the power in him even more. I mean, he can only get more powerful, right? And I think that he's going to bring in a whole nother different visibility to it. Obviously, Cameroon is in Africa. The African power is strong right now in sports. And I think that him dominating the way that he is in boxing, for them to overlap, like cross over into boxing, that's going to be even more historical. It's going to be like just great, especially, for just African Americans, you know what I'm saying? But to make it about, he's from Cameroon. I mean, that's putting Cameroon on the map, you know what I'm saying? And then African power is strong for sure. So I can't wait to see him next year. Now, I was too distracted to even watch college football. I'm not even gonna lie. I was so into the fight. But speaking of college football, of course, Deion Sanders still on the map, still getting all the praise and stuff like that for what he's doing in the Pac-12 with Colorado. But over the weekend, I saw that, they're at the Rose Bowl playing against UCLA, and Terrell Owens has now joined Deion Sanders in Colorado. So they've always had this brotherhood, good relationship of supporting one another. Terrell Owens was already helping or giving his input when Deion Sanders was at Jackson State, Mississippi. So, and that's not far from T.O. stomping grounds, him being, from Alabama and stuff like that. But all I'm saying is that what football player is not going to want to go to Colorado to learn up under these two legendary football players? I mean, can the coaching staff get any more elite?
I think Terrell Owens at Colorado, I think on paper, on social media, it looks phenomenal. On paper, it looks good. I'm not sure the impact that Terrell Owens can have. And I say that with the respect of the greatest players are not always the greatest coaches. And I'm not saying that about Terrell Owens. I'm not saying that about Deion Sanders. But I am saying that I'm just not sure. I kind of feel that this is more of a publicity stunt rather than, something that's actually going to build the program. Mm-hmm. I'm not even sure how long Deion Sanders intends on staying with Colorado. Mm-hmm. So Terrell Owens joining, is this going to be, a seasonal thing? Are you in for the long haul? What is this? And I only say this because right now college football is in such a critical state. College coaching, when it comes to the conference realignments, when it comes to the NIL, and so much stuff is changing. I mean, we don't even know if there could be 2 super conferences, within the next 5 years, with all of the schools that are being bought out. So I just think that college football is in such a critical state, and what Deion is doing in Colorado, it can really be major. It can be big if all of the right steps are being made, which he is making them so far. I think Terrell Owens could definitely add some great stuff. I believe that the recruiting, was also going to be big at Colorado. But college football is college football. It's really not anything you can predict. No one. I mean, when you look at this season alone, I don't think anyone would have predicted the upsets, the wins, the losses, the coaching changes, the scandals. I mean,
yeah.
It's unpredictable. So I think Terrell Owens can definitely add greatness to Colorado, but I just want to see how things play out because I think college football fans, we've been treated to so much that I think we're getting excited too quickly, but I think that sometimes we can get a little too excited too fast, and I think we saw it with Ark Manning. When Ark was going to Texas, we all thought he was going to be the savior of the program, and that's not the case.
Yeah, right.
He needs to sit. He needs to learn. He needs more time at quarterback. Even with Ohio, people thought Ohio State was going to be that big program. The defense has turned around. And we've always had an elite offense. But here, the season started, and it's the very opposite. We have a strong defense, and the offense is not there. Our quarterbacks aren't there. So I just think that as fans, we just need to digest everything that is happening.
Yeah.
And just process it.
Yeah.
And not make assumptions too quickly.
Because I think, but him being there, it also adds a little bit more pressure to the athletes themselves. You know what I'm saying? Because they know that everybody is like, okay, you have these 2 elite, Hall of Famers there, and we expect you to dominate. You know what I'm saying? You have the best of both worlds. And Deion could call some more people. You know what I'm saying? It's not that he can't, but I think that for T.O., this is a good look because T.O., he's always been a part of the community and giving back and stuff like that. But to actually just be more hands-on and in the limelight, like Dion, I think Dion is definitely inspiring some of the other Hall of Famers deep down to come and be a part of stuff like this, because these student athletes need this type of influence. You know what I'm saying? You guys are still around, thankfully, by the grace of God. And so I think that him just being there in the atmosphere, taking on this role is a good look for T.O., because, you know, T.O. is also not shy to the cameras, and I can definitely see why him and Deion Sanders have that brotherhood, you know, that good relationship. So I think that him being another person not afraid of the camera, loving the limelight and stuff like that, and then all for the sports and things of that nature, because T.O. is also tapped into other sports. You know, he's good at track and stuff like that. But I think that this is good for the kids in that sense. But I do, you know, start to wonder that, you know, when you have such a star-studded coaching staff or people coming on, like, how does this really affect the kids? Because it's not them on the field. They are on the field, but you don't want it to be like vicariously living through the kids. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
I think that some student athletes have definitely felt that or sensed that before. But I just look at it as it's a good look for T.O. to be with Colorado right now with Deion Sanders. I just think it's a good look. But I'm concerned about the students.
You know, and that's why I said that's why I said it looked good on social media, but I just don't know how in reality it's going to play out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's so many angles you could take it from, and it's hard for me to speak on this in a way, because as a former gymnast, there wasn't a handful of black gymnasts for me to look up, especially black male gymnasts.
Right.
There was literally none growing up. The only person I remember was Dominique Dawes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, by the time I did see other black gymnasts, it was when I got older, and they were also, you know, pretty much in my own age group. So it wasn't like as a kid I had that one person to look up to. Whereas in football, it's the very opposite. You know, just about, you know, every black member in your family, you know, guy played football. So it's a very black dominated sport. And I say that with the respect of, for young football players to see Terrell Owens, it's, you know, in some ways it's not like, oh my gosh, like, if he made it there, I made it too, because pretty much, you know, there's the accessibility is there to where, you know, when you look at people like when you look at players from Ohio State or, you know, Georgia alum, a lot of those alum that actually did go to the NFL were black, you know?
Yeah.
When you look at Alabama's, you know, guys who went to the NFL last year, they were black.
Right.
So for these black student athletes, you know, to see black figures go and make it, that's not abnormal.
Right.
And so I think that sometimes, you know, for non-football fans to see Terrell Owens, you know, kind of like on a coaching level, it's almost like, oh my gosh, like he's inspiring these kids. But to some of these kids, you know, it's just almost like this T.O., you know, it's just T.O., you know, just like Marv Harrison, that's Marv, or
right.
like you know, it's different. So I just think, you know, I think for him being there is a good look, but I'm not sure if it's actually going to do something for the student athletes, like you said.
Yeah.
And I just think that sometimes, you know, sometimes it's hard to see people for who they really are when there's so much flashiness that kind of is flaunted outwardly. And I'm not saying that T.O. is a flashy. You know, I don't.
He's had that problem before, though, in the past. You know, people seeing him for who he really is. So.
Deion Sanders, you know, when he came in for Colorado, it was like, after a while, it seemed like everything was just like for show. You know, it almost, you know, seemed rehearsed. Everything you put out on social media was rehearsed. Every clapback or comeback that you had, it was just, you know, after a while, it just seemed rehearsed. And I think that, you know, I hate to say it, but I'm gonna say it. I think a big humble pill was when Colorado got beat by Oregon. And
Yeah.
I think, like Dan said, when they took that old-fashioned butt whooping, it kind of put them back into reality. To
Yeah.
realize, hey, like now we can't just play for Hollywood or for clicks, but we got to play. We got to play for a freaking bowl game.
Right.
So too many losses, y'all ain't gonna make it. And again, Dion has done enough already for the program. He's in the tournament already, but now looking ahead, how are you gonna keep progressing? Like the tournament that you have now is good, but what are you going to do to sustain that?
Mm-hmm.
Because, not only are you moving on to a bigger competitive conference, but the landscape of college football is not going to get any easier, especially with the playoff expanding,
Yeah.
especially age of the NIL, where you have schools like Alabama who might not recruit top kids anymore because, Texas has the NIL money. And that's just the day and age in college athletics that we're in. So it's really going to change the landscape of college sports. I think a lot of the traditional powerhouse teams aren't going to be traditionally powerhouses anymore.
Yeah.
And because that, in the landscape of NIL and social media, a lot of these non-traditional programs are going to be on the rise. And I think that it's already happening. Look at Colorado, look at Texas, and not that Texas was never, a good team, but when was the last time they made it to the play? I don't even remember them being.
And you know what? With Tio coming into that space, I think it's good for coming into the space of a PWI. I think that it's going to open up more doors for other PWIs to realize what's lacking and what's working and what's not working. Something that you've been doing for years. Well, this is the new way to kind of look at how things are working. Because look what happened at Colorado, right? It's not just about the fact that, he's made, in the beginning, he was winning all the games and stuff like that. But look how everything is, even with the losses, right? He's still, the branding for me, it's what is really just amazing. That's what makes the story even more amazing because of the branding. And it's like, that's also working with the NIL thing, right? And it's like, how do they, So it's like, how do they do that? So him bringing T.O. on, I think it's going to help him understand what it takes to help how to build something. If he wants to, continue this coaching thing, just how to, expand it the way that he did with all of the new changes with the NIL. Because we were talking about, it's not just college NIL, high school NIL too. You got to think about that transition. And then you also have to think about the fact that Deion Sanders has been saying, like, no more D1, no more high schoolers going to D1 schools. It's not going to be that anymore. You know what I'm saying? Because he's changed the landscape and he's found a loop.
And, like you said, the engagement, the viewership, I don't think people realize that viewership is important. Teams, programs that can build NTV ratings, networks like that. I for those that are unaware, conferences have deals with networks. And the reason why the Pac-12 has died out, and the reason why Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and USC are going to the Big Ten is because of contract deals. The Pac-12 cannot secure a contract because no TV wanted to work with the Pac-12 because the Pac-12 doesn't generate the numbers, their viewerships, like the Big Ten does, like the SEC does. So with that being said, those schools then had to migrate to conferences that get those viewerships, that has, that huge engagement, with their fans, with their coach. And that's what builds a culture, and that's what Deion is doing. Even on social media, they have 1 million followers. If I'm not mistaken, I don't even think they had 100,000. I don't. I think like 50,000 followers on Instagram, and now they have 1 million followers on Instagram. When you look over on Twitter, they have approximately 250,000 followers on Twitter. I'm sure they probably had like 30,000. I kid you not. Colorado was like, I hate to say it was like the scum of, it was like the bottom of your shoe when it comes to football. And now they're the most talked about programs. And I think that today they actually might have the most watched game of all college football teams, Colorado, this year. Of course, the game has been played yet.
Yeah.
So I believe Michigan and Ohio State will top that easily.
Because
But
that's probably gonna be the next record breaker right there because of all the scandal and investigation going on. So
but Colorado, Deion, he's doing a great job in terms of turning around that program. So again, I think it looks good. I just think it's going to be interesting to see what moves he's going to make in order to sustain it. To keep moving forward because, you know, one thing about Nick Saban might not pull in the whole and get, he might not be such of a character, but
yeah.
that man knows football and he can turn a program around. And I'm not saying that Deion doesn't have that knowledge, but I mean, I'm sure Deion would say he doesn't have that knowledge because Nick Saban is a legend. He's been coaching for longer than, you and I. He's been coaching longer than than my parents.
You're like, who's the oldest coach in college football history?
So, he's literally been coaching just about longer than my mom has been alive. So, Nick Saban, he is a legend. And, again, he might not have that whole character persona, but he knows football, and that's what's going to carry his program. So it's going to be interesting. College football is, man, Rihanna, it's
I know.
itself.
Yes, I'm excited. So that is it for today's episode, guys. Thanks for tuning in. You'll see us again on Friday at 5:30. We may make it earlier, it's the weekend, so we'll see. But that's it for today. Make sure you guys follow us on Facebook, on Instagram. The links are down below. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Oh, wait.
I